Chapter 2253. Just like the hooligans just now, they were scared out of their wits after Yun Jian spoke. Yun Jian kept her butterfly knife and said nothing more. Yi Qingqing could not help exclaiming at the sight. Nevertheless, Yi Qingqing was not too impressed by Yun Jian's skills since she had dealt with Lin Mingyu back in Xinjiang Town Junior High School. Yi Qingqing, on the other hand, was deeply grateful to Yun Jian. After a short gathering at a nearby milk tea shop, Yun Jian went home and packed her luggage. She had agreed to meet Ce 7 days later, but before that, Yun Jian had to go somewhere. "Xiao Jian, you're going on a long trip again?" Qin Yiru could not help asking when she saw Yun Jian leaving the house with her backpack. Mom." Yun Jian nodded. She did not say anything else. If Qin Yiru knew that her trip was extremely dangerous, Qin Yiru would definitely be worried. She might as well not say anything. Be careful then. After learning about Yun Jian's identity as slaying god, Qin Yiru did not restrain Yun Jian's actions anymore. When she heard Yun Jian's words, she said nothing more. Yun Jian nodded and left the house. After leaving home, Yun Jian went straight to the airport and headed to Country S. Before she went out to sea to search for Death Island, she had something important to do. She had to confront the old pirate who was the only one who had been to Death Island back then. At the same time, in Deity Continent. It had been a few days since Gunyanji came to Deity Continent with Li Nong. Deity Continent was huge. Gunyanji had not seen anyone from Deity Continent even after wandering aimlessly for 3 days. At this moment, Gunyanji reached out to wipe the sweat on her forehead. She walked and stopped to ask Li Nong with a frown, "I've been gone for so long, but I haven't even seen half of the deities of your god's continent. You're not trying to lead me astray, are you?" "The gods of the god's continent rarely go out," Li Nong said in a serious manner. If Huang Yen was here, he would probably roll his eyes at Li Nong. What the gods of God's continent liked to do the most was to gather a large group of people together and compete with each other to see who was stronger. Li Nong had indeed deliberately led Gunyanji to a place with fewer people. "Are you serious? Then where is your home? Hurry up and take me to your place to rest." Gunyanji was about to throw up. At first, in order to come to the god's continent, she had even let Li Nong touch her butt and take advantage of her. Just thinking about it made Gunyanji regret it. He thought that there was something fun and delicious on the god's continent, but it turned out to be, "Hey, why don't you send me back? I don't want to stay on the god's continent anymore. It's not fun here. It's better to stay with Qin Yu." Gunyanji was holding a weed that she had pulled out from somewhere. Chapter 2254. By the time Gunyanji reacted, she was so frightened that she screamed and stood up. She protected her chest tightly and glared at Li Nong with bulging eyes. She bared her teeth and said to Li Nong, "Li Nong, you did it on purpose. It's not that there's no one at all. You did it on purpose. I want to go back to Earth." She should have known that a normal person wouldn't ask to touch her but before bringing her to the divine continent. Gunyanji instantly realized that Li Nong was most likely trying to take advantage of her. He was the kind of habitual offender who took advantage of girls. Pervert. Unexpectedly, after Li Nong stood up calmly, there was no change in expression on his serious face. He put his hands in his trouser pockets, and he didn't panic or fear when Gunyanji discovered his intentions. He simply turned his handsome face to Gunyanji and suddenly said, "You're right. This is the first time I've brought a girl back to the divine continent, so you can't leave. I've taken a liking to you, so you can't leave." On the other side, Yun Jian had already arrived in S country. S country was a developing country in China. The infrastructure of the city was poor, and the facilities of the 3-star hotels were relatively old. S country's economy was mainly based on agriculture, and the country's most important export product was Ceylon black tea. The country was also one of the 3 largest tea-producing countries in the world, so the domestic economy was deeply affected by the tea production situation. Of course, there were also some people in S country who relied on fishing for a living. S country was a country on the Indian Ocean plate, and the only old pirate who had been to the Death Island was from S country. The old pirate was now living in a mental hospital. Because he had suffered a great shock back then, he had become crazy. There were many adventurous people in the world who went to the legendary Death Island from S country, but most of them returned empty-handed. Generally, adventurous people who wanted to explore the Death Island would come to this mental hospital to ask the old pirate for information about the Death Island. Even if no one got any information about the other Death Islands from the old pirate, there were still adventurous people who came to this mental hospital to visit the old pirate and communicate with him, trying to get more information about the Death Island from the old pirate. After Yun Jian got off the taxi, she simply carried a decent backpack and went to the mental hospital. She looked up slightly and a dark light flashed in her eyes. In the next second, she walked into the mental hospital. Although this mental hospital was big, there were many people who came to visit the old pirate every day, so Yun Jian quickly walked in the direction with the most people and came to the mental hospital, the old pirate's ward. As expected, the old pirate's ward was filled with people. Even though 20 years had passed and the old pirate was already a little old man with white hair and beard, many people who loved adventure and excitement still insisted on coming here every day, trying to inquire about the mysterious Death Island from the old pirate. As soon as Yun Jian entered the room, she saw a little old man with white hair and a long beard. His eyes were dull as he sat on the bed in a daze. His whole body seemed to have been stimulated by something. Like a chick pecking at rice, his body trembled. From the looks of it, he seemed to be in a state of epilepsy. The old pirate's full name was Horace? Horace was the short name of the old pirate. At this moment, Horace was surrounded by people. The one who was half kneeling in front of Horace and asking about his well-being was a blonde woman in her 20s. The blonde woman was greeting Horace in fluent S-Nation's language. She wanted to get closer to Horace before she could get more information from him. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com. Wonderful book mobile version website, .com. She was so beautiful that no one could take their eyes off her. After stepping through the door, she went straight to Horace and looked at him coldly. She said bluntly to him, "What's wrong with you? You've been pretending to be crazy for 20 years. Even the mental hospital thinks that you're crazy. Mr. Horace, you're really something." The person who came was none other than Yun Jian. Once her words rang, everyone around her was stunned. Especially Eva, who had been flattering Horace all this time. Eva's expression froze for a moment. After a moment of shock, she immediately realized what Yun Jian meant. And Yun Jian said this after she had flattered Horace. Was she trying to make all her previous efforts go down the drain? Eva bared her teeth at Yun Jian and said angrily, "Please remember the domain name of this book, mobile version of reading website." Chapter 2256. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. Horace looked at Yun Jian from the corner of his eyes in shock, awe flashing across his eyes. Horace, who had been mentally retarded before, now looked just like a normal person, no matter if it was his face or his expression. Eva, who thought that Yun Jian was spouting nonsense, was taken aback by the abrupt change in her expression. Everyone in the mental hospital's ward, including Eva's team members and the group of people who urged Eva to hurry up, were all stunned on the spot. Mr. Horace, just like what Yun Jian said, he's not really crazy but pretending to be crazy. After all, there were countless international medical experts who claimed to be world-class doctors. After diagnosing Horace, they all concluded that Horace had really gone crazy after returning from the island of death. After those international medical experts and world-class doctors had confirmed that Horace was really crazy, no one questioned whether Horace was really crazy or just faking it. Everyone thought that Horace was crazy and tried to trick him, trying to get information about the Death Island from him. Until today, when Yun Jian pointed it out in front of everyone. When he pointed out that even the international medical experts and doctors could not tell that Horace was pretending to be crazy, everyone present was in an uproar. Not only that, even Horace himself was shocked. He had been pretending to be crazy for 20 years. He thought that no one would be able to see through him in this lifetime, but he didn't expect that a young girl who looked like she was just 18 years old would be able to see through him in a single glance. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. They couldn't accept the sudden turn of events. At that moment, Yun Jian smiled coldly. She looked at Horace from the side. Under the gaze of Horace and everyone else, she replied to Horace with simple but arrogant words. "Your eyes are different from those of a real crazy person. I can tell that you're faking it. As for those who claim to be world-class doctors, they're arrogant and pedantic. Naturally, they won't be able to tell that you're pretending to be crazy." After that, Yun Jian went to Horace and sat down on a stool beside his bed. Squinting her eyes, she looked at Horace lazily from the corner of her eyes and spoke at the same time. "So, you should tell us about the Death Island." After Yun Jian finished speaking, even Eva, who was insulting Yun Jian, shut her mouth and listened to Horace's reply. There was no doubt that the group of people present, including Eva, were all adventurous people. The Death Island was a terrifying place. Just hearing about it was enough to frighten anyone, but it was this place that made the adventurous people want to explore it. Therefore, after Yun Jian's question, everyone perked up their ears. Sigh. After Yun Jian's question, Horace sighed heavily. Chapter 2257. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. When Yun Jian finished her words, Eva and the others were stunned. What revenge? Could it be that when Mr. Horace and his friends accidentally entered Death Island, Mr. Horace and his friends lost their lives on Death Island? Because of someone? Eva was the first to react. She was stunned for a moment and she was shocked. As soon as she said this, Eva suddenly felt that something was wrong. No, Mr. Horace has been pretending to be a fool for 20 years. He shouldn't have told anyone about what happened on Death Island. How did you know? You're saying that Mr. Horace's friends died on Death Island? Revenge? Don't tell me you know what happened to Mr. Horace and his friends on Death Island? Compared to when she didn't trust Yun Jian in the beginning, Eva's tone towards Yun Jian had changed. However, since she couldn't explain it, Eva still questioned Yun Jian. Don't tell me Yun Jian knows what happened to Horace and his friends on Death Island? If she's so powerful she can just go to Death Island herself. Why would she ask Horace? Just when Eva thought that Yun Jian was spouting nonsense, she saw Horace's expression change again. Then Horace's expression darkened. He looked at Yun Jian and said in shock, I've never told anyone about this. I've never mentioned this to anyone. How do you know that my friends were killed by living people? Everyone saw Horace's astonishment. Hearing this, Eva and the people standing beside her were all shocked and dazed for a moment. Don't tell me she's right? You don't need to know how I know. You just need to tell me, do you want revenge? Yun Jian pressed her lips together and asked Horace nonchalantly amidst the shocked gazes of the people around her. With that, Horace nodded without hesitation. Of course. Horace clenched his fists as if he recalled something that made him grit his teeth. He was so angry that every cell in his body was trembling. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people became even more suspicious. How did this girl, who was about 18 years old, know about everything that happened to Horace on Death Island? Before they could think further, Yun Jian's lips curled and she spoke again. Then tell me how to get to Death Island. As thanks, I'll avenge you. Yun Jian wasn't a good person. Her goal was simple. Just like everyone else, she wanted to know how to get to Death Island. Many times, if you were to ask someone for help, it would be easier and more effective to grasp the other party's heart than to give him or her 100 gifts. Yun Jian was right. Yun Jian was right. Horace was truly moved. Can you really avenge me? It had been 20 years, but he still couldn't forget what happened on Death Island. However, he had to force himself to forget the series of events that happened on Death Island. It wasn't that Horace didn't want to avenge himself, but he didn't have the strength to do so. Just as Horace said that, Yun Jian's lips curled as she spoke to Horace solemnly in front of everyone, shocking them with her words. In the name of the medical world's hand of death, I solemnly swear to you that as long as you tell me where to go to Death Island, I'll avenge you. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 2258. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Although Yun Jian wasn't a good person, she had never once made a promise to anyone. You're the hand of death. Just as Yun Jian's words left her mouth, Eva and the group of people beside her were all shocked, as they screamed out in shock. The hand of death, of the medical world. No wonder. No wonder you could tell that I was acting crazy, so you're the hand of death, of the medical world. The legendary hand of the Grim Reaper that can even save the dead and bring them back to life. When Horace heard Yun Jian's words, he was so shocked that his face changed as he looked at Yun Jian with disbelief, his pupils constricted, his back straightened as he was filled with fear. So this little girl who looks like she just came of age, is actually the internationally renowned hand of death. Oh my God, what's wrong with this world? Is this a fantasy? One of the foreign lads in Eva's team, who was in his 20s with chestnut-colored hair, grabbed his head as he looked at Yun Jian in shock as he screamed out in shock. This foreign lad with chestnut-colored hair was in the same team as Eva, and his name was Jia Wei. Jia Wei's looks were considered extremely handsome in the eyes of the foreigners. When Jia Wei heard Yun Jian's words, he was so shocked that his face changed, as though he didn't believe Yun Jian's words at all. After all, Yun Jian was only 18 years old, and her looks were extremely youthful, and she was prettier than any other girl of her age. Such a beautiful girl would only make others think that she was a university student, an ordinary girl full of youthful energy. But who could tell them that she was actually the internationally renowned Hand of Death, the one who could save lives from the hands of the Grim Reaper, the strongest woman in the medical world? Whether it was the medical world or the underworld, there was no one who didn't know of her. And such an existence was actually just a young girl? Even so, no one present did not believe Yun Jian's words. When everyone came to their senses, Horace took the lead and spoke calmly to Yun Jian. I believe you. I'll tell you how to get to Death Island. 20 years ago, Horace was still a wandering pirate sailing the seas with his old friends. Once, when they were at sea, they accidentally picked up a bottle. That bottle was very strange. Not only did it contain a small piece of paper, it also contained a sky blue necklace. That sky blue necklace was very beautiful, so beautiful that it made people forget to breathe. It was also very strange. There was only one simple sentence written on the small note. Holding the necklace in his hand, he boarded the boat and entered Death Island. That necklace is the key to leading us to the Death Island. Although it's very mystical, as long as you can find that necklace and go out to sea, the necklace will lead you to the Death Island. As Horace spoke, he frowned slightly as if he was recalling a terrifying incident. He clutched his head with both hands. You know where the necklace is? This sentence, Yun Jian did not use a question but a statement. Hearing Yun Jian's words, Horace frowned slightly. In the next second, Horace loosened his frown. He smoothed out his wrinkled brows and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then he continued to speak. Yes, it's in France's Paris Museum. If you want to go to Death Island, you must obtain it. Speaking until here, Horace pondered for 2 seconds and suggested to everyone. With your abilities, you shouldn't be able to retrieve that sky blue necklace from France's Paris Museum. France's Paris Museum of Natural History is heavily guarded. If an ordinary person wants to steal the necklace, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens. Perhaps you can use your computer to enter the page of an international assassin website and place a bounty on that international assassin website to request the help of an international assassin. Top reading website. M. 10 seconds later, Jay hung up the phone and said to everyone with a dejected expression, I'm sorry. That sky blue necklace has already been stolen by someone who hired a first-class thief from the fox hunting organization. If we want to get that necklace, we'll have to hire one of the top 10 Secret Service assassins in the world to have a chance of competing for it. But the top 10 Secret Service assassins on the International Secret Service assassin list? How can they be hired so easily? I think this sky blue necklace. Sigh, we won't be able to get it. Hearing Jia Wei's words, everyone was depressed. The top 10 Secret Service assassins on the International Secret Service assassin list? How could it be so easy to hire them? They originally wanted to hire a high-level Secret Service assassin, but now someone actually hired a first-class thief from the fox hunting organization to steal that necklace. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Even if she was the hand of death, no matter how powerful she was, wasn't she still just a scalpel? Could it be that he was strong enough to fight against the fox hunting organization and the godly thief? Jia Wei is right. You may be the hand of death, but you don't have the ability to fight against a level 1 godly thief from the fox hunting organization. If we can't get one of the top 10 international assassins to help us, we can forget about getting this sky blue necklace. If we robbed the sky blue necklace from the Paris Museum of Country F by ourselves, we might not even be able to enter the Paris Museum of Country F. That's right. Zhang Lixing said. After hearing Jay's words, Eva also stood up and said something. As they spoke, Eva expressed her disapproval of Yun Jian as well. The old pirate Horace shook his head. He knew that this plan would not work. When Horace was about to persuade Yun Jian to give up on going to Death Island, he suddenly saw Yun Jian lift up the corner of her long shirt. Without even looking, she coldly took out an M1911 pistol from her waist. Her other hand took out a few bullets and skillfully loaded them in front of everyone. In just 3 seconds, Yun Jian had completed the series of actions with ease before she pointed the gun at Jia Wei. As everyone looked at her in shock, she spoke with a smirk, You're right, Jia Wei. A doctor can also kill. Since I have my eyes on this necklace, no one in this world can get it before me unless that person is a dead person. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 2261. Lin Wei had wanted to give Yi Ling more time to accept everything, but it seemed like there was no need for that now. It was late at night. Yi Ling's moans only stopped when dawn came. This was a world that only belonged to the two of them. With you and me there was no room for a third person. Near the temple fair, Yun Jian brought Xiao Yunju, Duan Yi and Duan Yi to buy a lot of their favorite snacks, much to the delight of Xiao Yunju and his friends. Jieju is the best. Xiao Yunju exclaimed as he munched on a sugar-coated hawthorn. 10 seconds later, however, when Si Yi bought a big bag of lollipops for Xiao Yunju, Duan Yi and Duan Yi, Xiao Yunju corrected himself. Si Gij is the best. Sigij is the best in the world. Yun Jian was rendered speechless. Suddenly, Duanli pointed at a group of children who were about the same age as Xiao Yunju and Duanli and told Xiao Yunju, "Xiaozhu, look, those are our classmates." "It's them?" Xiao Yunju's eyes lit up at Duanli's words. In the next second, he went to Yun Jian with a bag of lollipops and pushed Yun Jian gently into Siyi's arms. "Sigij, we're taking the lollipops. We're going to play with our classmates. Jie will give them to you." As he spoke, Yunju dragged Duanli and Duanya away. Yun Jian, on the other hand, blushed when Xiao Yunju pulled her into Siyi's arms. Siyi's lips curled up at that. He held Yun Jian's hand smoothly and pulled Yun Jian's back against his chest, placing her hand somewhere indescribable. Then he bent down and pressed his head against her hair, taking a whiff of its fragrance and said suddenly, "Xiao Jian, you smell so good." Yun Jian's cheeks became slightly moist when she heard that. The fireworks show has begun. Those who came to see the fireworks, hurry to the bridgehead in front to see the fireworks. You can see the fireworks from the bridgehead in front. The big boss spent 200,000 yuan to donate the fireworks event, and it only lasted for half an hour. Everyone hurry up. This is a rare opportunity. Someone walked out and called out to the crowd. For a moment, everyone rushed to the bridgehead that the man had mentioned. Xiao Yunju was only a little over 10 years old, but Xiao Yunju and the other two were already very independent. Moreover, Xiao Yunju and the other two had their hands stuffed in their pockets. If there was anything they would call Yun Jian, so Yun Jian was not worried about them. Once Siyi heard that the fireworks were going off, he grabbed Yun Jian's hand and walked toward the bridgehead that the man had mentioned. When they came to the bridgehead, there were people standing around it. It was 6 o'clock. Creak bong, bong, bong. At this time the sound of fireworks was heard and it lasted for half an hour. Yun Jian squinted at the fireworks in the sky, her thoughts drifting far away. In her previous life she had never dreamed that she would be able to return to a normal life one day. The ultimate outcome of underground assassins and secret agents was death without exception. The only difference was whether they died earlier or later. She was also prepared to die. What she did not expect was that she was reborn because of the sandalwood box. She even met him, the love of her life, the lover that she could give up everything for. She had thought that her life was just like the fireworks, that it would only last for a brief moment. When the fireworks bloomed, it was so beautiful that it was breathtaking. But after a few seconds when the fireworks burned out there was no more. It went back with the wind, amazed the world with a single brilliant feat, and then left the world silently. Just like her previous life, she could not see the future. But after her rebirth, everything was different. Even at the end of the world there would be different fireworks. She, Yun Jian, would protect all that she had obtained with great difficulty even if she had to die. The existence of the mysterious man made Yun Jian panic, and it would affect the people she cared about. But when had she, Yun Jian, ever been afraid? What was more, she had obtained all of this with great difficulty. How could she not dare to move forward because of a mysterious man? Yun Jian would kill whoever stood in her way, no matter if it was a god or a demon. When the fireworks show ended, everyone was almost gone. The bridge, which had been bustling with noise and excitement, was now deserted. Under the bridge where no one could see, Siyi put his slender arm behind Yun Jian's head as a pillow. His handsome lips tightly grasped the little mouth that made him want to touch her all the time. Yun Jian also put her arms around Siyi's neck and responded to his kiss. Just when the two were kissing and forgot about each other, an auntie who was sweeping the floor near the bridge suddenly saw the duo under the bridge. She looked like she had seen something terrifying as she sprung up in shock and pointed at the duo, shouting for help around her. "You're right. You're right. You're right. Oh my God, they are acting like hooligans in broad daylight. Come on, there is a wretched man who is going to rape the little girl." Chapter 2262. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. When Yun Jian walked out of Horace's ward, Jie Wei was unwilling to give up. Coupled with Eva and his teammates' urging, he tried to contact another level 1 godly thief from the fox hunting organization that he would not contact unless it was absolutely necessary. That level 1 godly thief owed Jie Wei's father a favor. That was why Jie Wei contacted that level 1 godly thief to ask him to return the favor. Logically speaking, since the other level 1 godly thief from the fox hunting organization had accepted the task of stealing the sky blue necklace, the other level 1 godly thieves from the fox hunting organization were not supposed to steal from their own members. However, the level 1 godly thief that Jie Wei contacted happened to owe Jie Wei's father a huge favor. Since Jiawei begged him, that level 1 godly thief could not refuse him. That was why he agreed to Jiawei's request even if he had to steal from another member of the fox hunting organization. However, to Yun Jian, it was equivalent to fighting with 2 other level 1 godly thieves from the fox hunting organization for the sky blue necklace. The reason why Jiawei was so smug was because he had invited another level 1 godly thief from the fox hunting organization. Furthermore, that level 1 godly thief owed his father a favor. With that, he had the highest chance of getting the sky blue necklace. That was why Jiawei came to Yun Jian to show off in front of her. He wanted to take revenge for the time when Yun Jian pointed her gun at his head. Jiawei thought that since Yun Jian had reacted quickly to his actions in Horace's ward, she would definitely retaliate. However, Yun Jian only gave him a look of disdain. She then gestured to the godly thief and the others and walked towards the entrance of the mental asylum. The moment they stepped out of the mental asylum, one of the godly thief's companions, who was around 23 or 24 years old, commented on Jiawei's actions. He's just like a child who never grows up. As she spoke, the woman, who was around 23 or 24 years old, shook her head. Nice to meet you, young lady. It's time for me to introduce myself. I'm Calvin from Germany. I'm 32 years old this year. These are my companions. The godly thief extended his hand towards Yun Jian. Yun Jian. She did not extend her hand and simply stated her name in English. The godly thief did not think that Yun Jian's godly thief translation. After all, different countries were different. It was normal for people from different countries to not like to extend their hands to show goodwill when they met. Ella. My name. The godly thief, the godly thief's the godly thief. The thief and the thief and boy thief, the godly thief and was the thief. Thief is translation then, the thief and the thief. Cav's translation is Gogodly translation how translation to translation in. They didn't talk much and arrived at the Paris Museum in France as quickly as possible. The night of the stars ye the night. At 3 in dawn. Yun Jian and Calvin arrived at the Paris Museum in France. As soon as he arrived at the Paris Museum in France, he saw a group of people using computers to connect a line and fiddling with something at the entrance of the museum. Looking closely, wasn't this group of people led by Jay and Eva? Among the group of people led by Jay and Eva, there was a very muscular man. Needless to say, this robust man must be a level 1 godly thief from the fox hunting organization. This group of people was using a computer to connect to the Paris Museum in France. They were using the computer to operate something. Their purpose was obvious. They were trying to cut off all the power gates in the Paris Museum. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2263. It was the Paris Museum in Country F. A museum with Paris as its name meant that it was protected by Country F. There were a lot of cultural relics in the museum, so there were a lot of tourists and many staff members in the museum during the day. At night, when the staff members were asleep, there would be a lot of people patrolling the museum, but there weren't many of them. That was because there were cameras installed everywhere in the Paris Museum. Not to mention the cultural relics, even the blind spots of the entrance were installed with cameras. Not even a fly was allowed to fly past the surveillance range of the cameras. The cultural relics in the museum were also illuminated by invisible infrared rays. The infrared rays were invisible to the naked eye, but once someone passed through and was illuminated by the infrared rays would send out a loud alarm. With that, everyone woke up. The Paris Museum was a very dangerous place. The most important thing to do in order to sneak in was to cut off the power switch and cause a blackout in the Paris Museum. However, they couldn't enter the power control room in the Paris Museum, so they could only connect to the power switch from the outside and use their hacking skills to hack the power switch in the Paris Museum. Mr. Ling Feng, are you done here? Jiawei was so anxious that he was sweating. Ling Feng was a level 1 godly thief in the fox hunting organization. At the same time, he owed Jiawei's father a favor, so he was here to repay the favor by helping Jiawei steal the necklace. At that time, Ling Feng had hacked the power switch in the museum with his computer for a long time, but it still didn't work. Beginners could use their hacking skills to control computers and hack into large companies to steal money. However, people with strong hacking skills could even use it to hack the power supply of a large place or all the power supply of a large place. Those who were good could even use their hacking skills to make a large venue explode at any time. Of course, the latter could only be done by someone who had reached the pinnacle of hacker skills, such as hacking the power supply of a large venue and using hacker skills to cause an explosion in a well-arranged venue. In the words of the underworld, these were things that only the big shots at the top of the world could afford to play with. I still need an hour. The power and control room in the Paris Museum in Country F are too complicated. Don't rush. After Ling Feng heard Jia Wei's urging, he calmly moved the computer in his hand and continued to attack the Paris Museum's defense system with his not-so-skilled hacking skills. After Jia Wei heard this, he didn't dare to rush him. At that time, Jia Wei saw Yun Jian's group. Why are you here now? Could it be that she wants to take advantage of the time when Mr. Ling Feng is working hard to turn off all the power in the Paris Museum and take advantage of the opportunity to enter the Paris Museum with us? How shameless. When Jia Wei saw this, he didn't even think about it before blurting out these words. However, the moment Jia Wei said this, he saw Yun Jian walk around Jia Wei and walk in front of Ling Feng. What are you trying to do? Eva saw this and stood up to stop Yun Jian. However, just as Jay and Eva were looking at Yun Jian as if she was here to cause trouble, Yun Jian suddenly stopped. In front of everyone, Yun Jian spoke nonchalantly and arrogantly to Ling Feng, who was immersed in his computer. I'm not going to let you down. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version reading website. Chapter 2265. Yun Jian's words were not a question to Ling Feng, but an affirmation. After she said that, Ling Feng, who had been using the computer to try and cut off all the power in the museum, suddenly stopped when he heard Yun Jian's words. How did you know? All the information of the Level 1 Godly Thieves in the Fox Hunting Organization is encrypted and sealed by professionals. Other than the few people at the top of the world, no one else knows about this. Ling Feng stopped what he was doing and turned around to look at Yun Jian. His face was full of shock and fear. All the information of the Level 1 Godly Thieves in the Fox Hunting Organization was encrypted and sealed. Normal people would not be able to find out what the Level 1 Godly Thieves in the Fox Hunting Organization were good at and what their weaknesses were. As a person in the underworld, the last thing they should do was to expose their weaknesses to others. Therefore, the Fox Hunting Organization valued the information of the Godly Thieves in the organization. Once their weaknesses were exposed to the enemy, they would most likely die. Therefore, Ling Feng had just buried his head in the computer and did not mention why the Level 1 Godly Thief in the same organization, Guiling, was able to sneak into the Paris Museum. However, he did not mention that he was going to sneak into the Paris Museum like Guiling to take back the necklace. This involved Ling Feng's and Guiling's weaknesses. After all, Ling Feng and Guiling were godly thieves in the same organization. If the two of them exposed each other's weaknesses, it would not benefit either of them. Yun Jian had pointed out all of Guiling's and Guiling's strengths and weaknesses so accurately. This gave Ling Feng a great shock. It was as if he was naked in front of Yun Jian. This feeling made Ling Feng terrified. Mr. Ling Feng, I think she's purposely messing with your thoughts. Just ignore her. She wants to use your hands to reap the benefits. You can't let her have her way. Seeing that Ling Feng was shocked by Yun Jian's words, Jia Wei, Eva, and the others were also shocked. However, after regaining his senses, Jia Wei thought about it again. Just a moment ago, Yun Jian was acting so powerful and even said things like asking the useless Ling Feng to move aside. In the end, she didn't have any ability at all. She was deliberately pretending to know when she didn't know so that Ling Feng would think that she really knew. After Ling Feng successfully turned off all the electricity in the museum, he brought them into the museum. Then while Ling Feng was fighting with Guiling, he snatched the sky blue necklace before Ling Feng could. After saying that to Ling Feng, Jia Wei turned to Yun Jian and bared his teeth at Yun Jian. I'm telling you, I'm the one who invited Mr. Ling Feng here. When Mr. Ling Feng cuts off all the electricity in the museum, don't even think about going in with us. When Jia Wei said this to Yun Jian, he said it in a fierce tone. When Yun Jian heard Jia Wei's words, she sneered. It's time. Just as Jia Wei was waiting to see what Yun Jian would say to refute him, Yun Jian suddenly spoke up. What do you mean by that? Jia Wei was dumbfounded when he heard that. In the next second, Yun Jian took off her thick down jacket in front of everyone and handed it over to AI La. After taking off the thick down jacket, everyone saw that Yun Jian was only wearing a black tights and a pair of black leather pants. The black leather pants had 2 butterfly knives strapped to her thighs. 2 silver pistols were strapped to her waist and an eagle claw was strapped to her back. In an instant, she changed from a teenage girl to a secret agent assassin. Jay, Eva, Calvin, and the others couldn't help but be stunned when they saw this scene. Before anyone could react, Yun Jian leaped to the thick and tall wall almost within a second, barely avoiding the danger line. Before she left Jia Wei and the others with a soundless message that made Jia Wei puke blood in exasperation. Alright, I forgot to mention that I'm best at concealment. Surveillance cameras have no effect on me, so I'll be leaving first. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2266. Looking at Yun Jian's appearance, she was obviously fully equipped. And she actually said that she was also an expert in concealment. This meant that Yun Jian didn't even need Ling Feng to cut off the museum's power to enter. Yun Jian's words made Jia Wei so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. One must know that Jia Wei had been bragging about how Ling Feng could cut off all the power in the museum. But Yun Jian actually had the ability to avoid all the surveillance cameras in the museum. This meant that Yun Jian didn't even need Ling Feng to cut off the museum's power. And at that time, Yun Jian flashed into the museum after saying those words and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Her speed was so fast that even Jia Wei, who had always been unhappy with Yun Jian, was astonished. Who is that little girl? She can actually avoid all the surveillance cameras like Gui Ling. Just as Yun Jian disappeared in front of everyone's eyes, Ling Feng said in a shocking tone. She is. Eva was just about to say that Yun Jian was the hand of death in the medical world. But before she could finish, Jia Wei elbowed her harshly. Jay glared fiercely at Eva, then spoke in a somewhat displeased tone. She's just an ordinary university student. Who could she be? Jia Wei said in a very unhappy tone. Obviously, Jia Wei was very dissatisfied with Yun Jian's identity as the Hand of Death. The legendary Hand of Death in China was actually someone like Yun Jian. This made Jia Wei unwilling to accept it and didn't want to believe it. Just as Jia Wei finished speaking, Ling Feng's incomparably shocked voice suddenly rang out, making Jia Wei, Eva, Text, Ella, and everyone else present suddenly tremble after hearing it. That's really incredible. Gui Ling's concealment, avoiding cameras and infrared rays, is the strongest among the level 1 godly thieves in the fox hunting organization. Who is that girl? She actually has the same ability as the strongest level 1 godly thief in the fox hunting organization, Jia Wei. At that moment, Yun Jian had already avoided layers and layers of 360-degree surveillance cameras in the Paris Museum and quickly arrived at the outside of the Paris Museum. The Paris Museum was indeed an international museum. The surveillance cameras at night were installed. Even a fly would have a hard time flying past its range. But this wasn't a problem for her. Yun Jian was currently leaning against the wall of the Paris Museum. She was looking at the window on the 3rd floor of the Paris Museum. After gauging the height, Yun Jian took out the prepared eagle claw from her waist and held it in her hand. The eagle claw seemed to have a life of its own as she lightly swung it to hook the claw onto the window on the 3rd floor. She tugged on the rope that held her talon tightly. After making sure that the talon had hooked onto the edge of the window on the 3rd floor, she turned sideways and stepped on the wall. It took her less than 3 seconds to make her way to the window on the 3rd floor. He took out the iron wire that he had prepared beforehand from his hair and inserted it into the lock of the window on the 3rd floor. With a gentle tug, the window opened. She opened the window, jumped in, and closed the window. Yun Jian executed the series of actions smoothly without making any noise in the silent night. It took less than 10 seconds for Yun Jian to climb into the window on the 3rd floor from the wall on the 1st floor. Yun Jian had just climbed into the window on the 3rd floor when she heard a noise not far away. Her eyes shifted slightly and she rolled to the side to hide in the dark. At this moment, 2 soft male voices came from not far away and entered her ears. Someone just reported that an international thief came to our museum to steal the necklace tonight. Brother, which international thief do you think is so powerful to target us? It doesn't matter who it is. What's important is that no matter who it is, he won't be able to escape today. Moreover, our people have already protected the necklace. No matter how powerful the international thief is, he can't steal the necklace in front of so many Interpol officers. He's not slaying God, the #1 international secret agent. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2267. The 2 men's voices sounded, and there was a hint of teasing in their conversation. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Someone reported that an international thief had come to the museum tonight to steal the necklace? In other words, the necklace has been completely guarded by the Interpol? This would be a fatal blow to any international thief. However, after Yun Jian heard this, her eyes narrowed even more. At this moment in the museum hall, in a transparent glass safe, a string of sky blue necklaces was stored. The sky blue necklace did not look like jade. Just by looking at it with the naked eye, one could not tell what material this sky blue necklace was made of. However, the necklace emitted a pale blue light under the dim yellow light in the museum hall. The pale blue light seemed to have an innate magic that made people want to approach it unconsciously. The necklace was so beautiful that it made people forget to breathe. Officer Xing, can that thief really steal the necklace? At this moment, in front of the blue necklace in the center of the hall, a criminal police officer asked another criminal police officer who was obviously in a higher position than him. After hearing this person's question, the somewhat handsome criminal police officer, who was called Officer Xing, frowned tightly and immediately responded, "Yes, Officer Xing, as long as I'm here, no international thief can steal anything from me." Officer Xing said solemnly. Of course, unless they met that woman. However, 10 minutes after Officer Xing finished speaking, the power and lights in the hall were suddenly cut off. Seeing this, Officer Xing's pupils shrank, but he quickly reacted and turned around to rush to the location of the sky blue necklace. Protect the necklace. Immediately contact the relevant personnel to open the power gate. Officer Xing yelled at his subordinates as he rushed. However, just as he said this, Officer Xing suddenly noticed a figure flash behind the transparent glass safe where the necklace was locked. Stop. Officer Xing rushed forward, trying to stop the other party. But before he could catch up, the figure that suddenly flashed by had already disappeared in front of everyone. Damn it. He got away. Officer Xing saw this and did not chase after him. Fortunately, the necklace was not stolen. Officer Xing heaved a sigh of relief. He thought that the thief could not steal the necklace, so he gave up on it and left. After all, to steal the necklace under everyone's nose, it only took 3 seconds. In this world no one could do this. And he knew a person who could do this. However, that person, that woman, should not be here to steal the necklace tonight. Just as Officer Xing was thinking this, he suddenly heard his subordinates behind him shout in a terrified voice, "Xing, Officer Xing, that necklace has been stolen." Yun Jian left the Paris Museum with light steps. Unlike when she came, she was now holding a sky blue necklace. The necklace's light blue glow in her hand. Not long after she exited the museum, she ran into Jia Wei, Ling Feng, Calvin, and others who had successfully made their way in. That necklace? It's mine. Give me the necklace. Seeing the necklace in Yun Jian's hand, Jia Wei's expression changed. He wanted to rush over and snatch it. However, before Jia Wei could rush over, Ling Feng's expression changed. He stopped Jia Wei and seemed to have realized something was wrong. At the same time, Yun Jian lifted the necklace and waved it in front of Jia Wei. Even if I give you the necklace, you won't be able to take it out of the Paris Museum. Yun Jian's words were ambiguous. Hearing this, Jia Wei's expression changed. What do you mean? However, just as Jia Wei finished speaking, a large group of Interpol walked over and surrounded Yun Jian, Ling Feng, and the others. Officer Xing, who was guarding the necklace in the museum's lobby, led a group of subordinates and calmly walked over to them. At the same time, beside Officer Xing was a young man in his late 20s. The young man wore a mask and was tall and thin. When Officer Xing and the young man arrived, Ling Feng's expression changed drastically. Gui Ling you. Ling Feng looked at the young man beside Officer Xing and his pupils constricted. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2268. Good evening, Ling Feng. But soon you won't be able to get better. At that moment, the young man who was Gui Ling looked at Ling Feng and coldly said these words to Ling Feng. Ha! Gui Ling, thanks to you, I was able to catch this group of thieves. Oh right, there's also a level 1 godly thief from the fox hunting organization, Ling Feng. The harvest this time is really not bad. Officer Xing chuckled. It turned out that it was Gui Ling who reported that an international godly thief had snuck into the Paris Museum. Gui Ling had contacted Officer Xing long ago. In order to cooperate, Officer Xing would lend the sky blue necklace to Gui Ling and Gui Ling would help Officer Xing catch the international godly thief, Ling Feng. Gui Ling's employer only needed to borrow the necklace and return it after achieving his goal. Gui Ling saw Ling Feng, who was from the same organization as him, as a thorn in his side. He couldn't wait to tear Ling Feng into pieces. So this time he borrowed Officer Xing's hand and planned to catch Ling Feng in one fell swoop. While he was at it, he would also arrest the thieves, who came with Ling Feng. Okay, the game is over. Who has the necklace? Hand over the necklace obediently. It's time to end this boring game. When Officer Xing saw the sudden change in the expressions of the people around him, he looked around with satisfaction and then spoke. Jia Wei, Eva, and the others who knew they had fallen into a trap were scared to death. What's going on? Jia Wei's face suddenly became extremely pale. He was so scared that his face turned green. Just as he started to tremble, Jia Wei suddenly pointed at Yun Jian and said loudly to Officer Xing, "She stole that necklace. It has nothing to do with us." We didn't even do anything. If you want to catch someone, catch her. Being caught by Interpol was no joke. Especially with a thief like Ling Feng, it was something that could cost them their lives. Officer Xing glanced at Yun Jian and said rudely to Jie Wei, "Of course I'll catch her, but you guys, are you sure you dare to catch me?" Just as Officer Xing finished speaking, a melodious female voice sounded in front of everyone. Interrupting Officer Xing. Hearing this familiar voice, Officer Xing suddenly froze. When the surrounding people heard this, their hearts skipped a beat and they turned their heads sideways. Yun Jian, who hadn't said a word since the beginning, said coldly. Yun Jian's words attracted everyone's attention. Officer Xing glanced at Yun Jian. Although he felt that Yun Jian's words sounded a little familiar, he didn't think too much about it. With Gui Ling as his backer and the strength of his subordinates, Officer Xing spoke boldly. "Who are you? Why wouldn't I dare to capture you?" Sir, this woman likes to bluff the most. She clearly doesn't know anything, but she wants people to think that she knows everything. Go ahead and arrest her." "Arrest her?" Seeing this, Jie Wei rolled his eyes again and pointed at Yun Jian as he spoke to Officer Xing. However, just as Jie Wei spoke, Yun Jian turned sideways and faced Officer Xing with her delicate face. Her red lips curved slightly and then she said something that shocked everyone present. So after not seeing each other for a few years, Officer Xing forgot the lesson from back then, forgot how your 156 elites died tragically, and forgot that you personally kneeled and handed the sandalwood box to me. Are you planning to go against me again? Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2269. In her previous life, when her younger brother was kidnapped, Langsha wanted Yun Jian to bring the sandalwood box to exchange hostages with him. Back then, the sandalwood box was very popular. Top international leaders and even some old guys who had been in seclusion for many years came out to fight for it. Some of them even hired top-secret agents or mercenaries to fight for the sandalwood box even at the cost of their lives. And the sandalwood box was obtained by Yun Jian from Officer Xing rather than a fight. It was more accurate to say that Officer Xing personally knelt and handed the sandalwood box to Yun Jian. This Officer Xing was an international-level criminal police officer. His international status was very high because Officer Xing had captured countless international felons. He had even participated in the arrest of a very powerful 3S level wanted criminal back then. Back then, the sandalwood box fell into Officer Xing's hands. However, this sandalwood box had not been in Officer Xing's hands for long. Before Officer Xing could warm the sandalwood box, a terrifying woman appeared. That woman was Yun Jian. Back then, Officer Xing swore that he would never hand over the sandalwood box. Later, Yun Jian killed all 156 of his elites in front of him. In the end, Officer Xing was forced to kneel in front of Yun Jian in public and hand the sandalwood box to Yun Jian. This incident was the shame of Officer Xing's career. At the same time, it was also Officer Xing's nightmare. Officer Xing did not know who that woman was, but after that, whenever he thought of that woman, Officer Xing would wake up from his dreams. Therefore, in Officer Xing's heart, Yun Jian's behavior was not only the shame of his career, but more importantly, it was a nightmare that would make Officer Xing break out in cold sweat every time he thought of it. Originally, Officer Xing thought that the terrifying woman would never stand in front of him again in his life. He never expected, this woman actually changed her face and appeared in front of him again? Officer Xing was so scared that his forehead was covered in cold sweat. He looked at Yun Jian in horror and opened his mouth, but he was so scared that he could not say anything. What is this woman saying? She actually said that our handsome and brave Officer Xing personally knelt in front of her and handed that sandalwood box? Who does she think she is? Southern Sea Guanyin? Slaying God, the #1 on the international secret agent ranking? What a joke. This was really going to make people laugh to death. Officer Xing, let's quickly arrest this thief. An Interpol officer standing next to Officer Xing, who was also Officer Xing's subordinate, suddenly laughed out loud after hearing Yun Jian's words. When he was done laughing, he sneered at Yun Jian with a slightly mocking gaze and spoke with a smirk. Not many people knew that Officer Xing had knelt down and presented the sandalwood box to Yun Jian. At least no one knew about it now, including Officer Xing's subordinates. Hearing Officer Xing's subordinate refuting Yun Jian in such a tone, Jie Wei, Eva, and the others instantly breathed a sigh of relief. Especially Jie Wei. He rolled his eyes at Yun Jian. At first, he thought that Yun Jian would come up with some tricks to let him get away. In the end, even Officer Xing's subordinates didn't know her. Yun Jian was obviously putting on a show. After rolling his eyes at Yun Jian lazily, Jie Wei began to worry about his own situation. Was he really going to be arrested together with Ling Feng? However, just as Officer Xing's subordinate and Jia Wei finished speaking, the surrounding people suddenly saw Officer Xing looking at Yun Jian as if he had seen a ghost. His face turned pale and his lips turned pale. Then he looked at Yun Jian and said in horror, "Please remember the domain name of this book." Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2271. Page 1/1. Yun Jian said as she lightly swung the sky blue necklace on her hand. The necklace hung on Yun Jian's index finger as if it would fly out of Yun Jian's hand if she wasn't careful. However, she maintained a leisurely and complacent expression from beginning to end. It was as if she was facing the threat of Ling Feng and Gui Ling, two first-class godly thieves from the fox hunting organization. She did not feel the slightest bit of panic or fear. "Mr. Ling Feng, didn't you say that you're an expert in direct combat and that you're strong? Let's defeat that woman and the other first-level thief and take the necklace." Jia Wei suggested quickly, remembering that Yun Jian had mentioned Ling Feng's prowess back then. The woman was, of course, Yun Jian. To Jia Wei nothing else mattered. The most important thing was for Ling Feng to take the necklace back from Yun Jian's hands. Hearing Jia Wei's words, Yun Jian's lips curled even tighter. She lightly pursed her lips and sneered. The fox hunting organization's #1 thief, Ling Feng, is indeed an expert in direct combat. However, have you forgotten that there is always someone stronger? Just because Ling Feng is an expert doesn't mean that he's the strongest. Yun Jian smirked coldly, her nonchalant expression making everyone's heart race. At that moment, Jia Wei, Eva, Calvin and everyone else were trying to figure out the meaning of Yun Jian's words. Yun Jian stretched out her hands and took out a pair of transparent leather gloves in front of everyone. Then, in front of everyone present, she put the pair of transparent leather gloves on her fair and slender hands. Her movements were slow and leisurely, but there was an indescribable sense of beauty. It was as if Yun Jian, who was slowly fiddling with the gloves, was just a harmless 18-year-old girl. While everyone was captivated by Yun Jian's action of slowly slipping the glove on her fair and slender hand, Yun Jian stared at her slender hand and curled her lips to provoke Ling Feng and Gui Ling in front of everyone. "I don't have time to interfere with your grudges. The necklace is in my hands now. You want it? Then let's fight for it. I don't have time to play around with you. If you want the necklace, come at me together." Yun Jian's words, coming from an 18-year-old girl, had an indescribable sense of arrogance. Hearing this, everyone present was stunned. Especially Gui Ling and Ling Feng. When Gui Ling heard Yun Jian's words, because he was wearing a mask, no one could see his expression. At that moment, everyone could tell from Gui Ling's body trembling after hearing Yun Jian's words that Gui Ling was stunned. Stunned for a moment, Gui Ling suddenly chuckled and spoke up after Yun Jian was done. "You're right. Since I've decided to get rid of Ling Feng today, do you think I came here alone?" After saying this, Gui Ling suddenly clapped his hands. At that moment, 7 figures suddenly flashed in the dark. Chapter 2272. This unforeseen event caught everyone off guard. Gui Ling wanting to deal with Ling Feng was already out of everyone's expectations. Now, it had become the case that the other 8 level 1 godly thieves from the Hunting Fox organization wanted to kill Ling Feng. In other words, the 7 level 1 godly thieves from the Hunting Fox organization who suddenly appeared had the same idea of killing Ling Feng. Since they all had the same idea, then no matter how powerful Yun Jian was, it would be good if she could match up to Gui Ling. Now Gui Ling had helpers. Gui Ling's helpers weren't ordinary people. They were the famous level 1 godly thieves from the Hunting Fox organization. There were 7 of them in total. Usually, the appearance of a level 1 godly thief from the Hunting Fox organization was enough to cause a commotion. But now, the only 9 level 1 godly thieves from the Hunting Fox organization were all present. And the 8 level 1 godly thieves wanted to kill one of them. Yun Jian actually dared to speak to Gui Ling in such a tone. Even if she didn't die, she would die from her own stupidity. Seeing this, Jay, Eva, Calvin, Ella, and the others all sucked in a deep breath and were stunned for a moment. This time Yun Jian was really done for. Gui Ling wasn't alone. With the arrival of his 7 helpers and Yun Jian saying such outrageous words, she had completely sent herself to a dead end. Hearing the words of the more muscular level 1 godly thief, Ling Feng suddenly shook his head and laughed. After laughing, he seemed to have given up on his own life. He raised his head and met the eyes of the 8 level 1 godly thieves, including Gui Ling, and laughed. "I, Ling Feng, have stolen countless rare treasures in my life, but I have never done anything to harm anyone's life. You want to kill me? This is a foregone conclusion. No matter, from the moment I stepped into the world of godly thieves, I didn't plan to leave alive. But they are innocent. Take it as my last plea to you, let them leave. Take the necklace. Ling Feng pointed at Yun Jian, Jia Wei, Calvin and the others as he spoke to the 8 level 1 godly thieves, including Gui Ling. After hearing Ling Feng's words, Gui Ling laughed loudly. Gui Ling already knew that Ling Feng's death was a foregone conclusion. He laughed loudly and refuted Ling Feng's words. Why are you still pretending to be a good person when you're about to die? This little girl dared to talk to me like that, I'm going to humiliate her to death. Only then can I resolve the hatred in my heart. After these words were spoken, the hearts of the surrounding people trembled violently. Jia Wei and the others were so scared that they didn't dare to utter a single word. It had evolved into this situation. This was a confrontation between a group of international bigwigs. None of them dared to utter a single word. Did they not want to live anymore? When Gui Ling saw this scene, he once again let out a strange laughter that sounded like silver bells. After laughing, he looked at Yun Jian and said to Ling Feng, "Since you care so much about her, I'll shoot her in front of you." As he spoke, Gui Ling reached out to take out a pistol from his waist. But just as he reached for the box at his waist, he felt nothing. Gun. Where was his gun? Just as Gui Ling was thinking about this, a girl's voice suddenly sounded. "Is this what you're looking for?" After speaking, Yun Jian suddenly stretched out her hand from behind her back. But what was different from before was that Yun Jian's outstretched hand was holding a large number of weapons. All kinds of guns and knives. When Gui Ling, the 7 level 1 godly thieves, and the other level 7 godly thieves saw these guns and knives, they all turned pale with fright. Aren't those our weapons? Why are they with you? Those weapons, how did they all end up in this little girl's hands? Gui Ling was so scared that his expression suddenly changed. Who exactly was she? Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2273. The Fox Hunting Organization was founded not too long ago. When the Fox Hunting Organization was founded as a thieving organization, the head of the Fox Hunting Organization had invited various international bigwigs to a banquet. Yun Jian, also known as Slaying God, was not the top secret agent on the international secret agent chart at that time. The head of the Fox Hunting Organization, Long Shi, had founded a thieving organization because of Yun Jian's reminder. When Slaying God first started her career, she did not accept assassination missions, but various cultural relics instead. When Yun Jian became Slaying God, she did not make a name for herself by going through the usual assassination missions. When she first started her career, she only accepted thieving missions and would occasionally accept assassination missions. Slaying God completed her thieving missions smoothly no matter how many people tried to stop her. She had never failed a thieving mission since she took on thieving missions. Regular thieving masters would more or less make mistakes, but Slaying God, who had just left the Inhun organization, not only became the most powerful thief in the history of thieving masters in the shortest amount of time. Later on, no matter how many people tried to stop her, she could complete her missions smoothly. That was not all. During the period when Slaying God took on thieving missions, she would send a theft notice to the owner of the treasures she had her eyes on before she stole them. In other words, when she stole a treasure, she had to tell the owner of the treasure that she was here to steal it. If he had the ability, he should be prepared. Even so, whenever Slaying God took on a thieving mission, even if the owner knew in advance that she was going to steal the treasure and hired numerous international bigwigs to guard it, there was nothing they could do. What was more terrifying was that not only did Slaying God manage to steal the treasure even when the owner of the treasure knew that she was going to steal it and hired numerous international bigwigs to guard it. Furthermore, they did not even know when Slaying God's men had stolen the treasure. That level of arrogance had caused an international uproar in the shortest amount of time. There were even people who said that Slaying God was not human but a ghost. Only a ghost could do such a thing. That was what the international community was saying. Slaying God was known as the Grandmaster of Thieving Masters back then because she was invincible. After that, Slaying God switched to assassination missions. Her influence on the international scene was so great that it led to the Blood Night incident. After the Bloody Night incident, Slaying God shot to fame and became a global sensation. At that time, the head of the Fox Hunting Organization, Long Shi, listened to Yun Jian and established the Fox Hunting Organization. As for Yun Jian, she was naturally invited by the head of the Fox Hunting Organization, Long Shi, as the Grandmaster of the Great Thief World with the highest VIP seat. At that time, this incident caused a sensation all over the world. Everyone present knew about it. Gui Ling and Ling Feng, who were standing in front of Yun Jian, as well as the 7 godly thieves from the Fox Hunting Organization, had all heard about this matter. Therefore, when they heard Yun Jian's words, everyone revealed shocked expressions. The progenitor of the thief god world. You're the progenitor of the thief god world? Isn't the ancestor of the thief god world? When the fox hunting organization was founded, the founder of the master thief world, Long Shi, had been hired as a VIP by the fox hunting organization's boss, was none other than Slaying God, the top secret agent on the international secret agent ranking. Guiling stared at Yun Jian with his eyes wide open in fear as he spoke in a daze. The progenitor of the thief god world was none other than Slaying God, the top secret agent on the international secret agent ranking back then. This was something that everyone in the circle was familiar with. At that time, after Guiling listened to Yun Jian's words, coupled with the fact that Yun Jian was able to steal the hidden weapons from him and the 7 international level 1 godly thieves from the fox hunting organization without anyone noticing, Guiling's body trembled violently. He was so stunned that he could not utter a word for a long time. When Guiling mentioned the 2 words, Slaying God, his voice was so soft that Eva, Jiawei, Calvin, Ella, and the rest could not hear him at all. Therefore, when Jiawei and the rest heard Guiling's words, their eyes froze and they were momentarily stunned. At that moment it was not just Guiling. Even Ling Feng and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves from the fox hunting organization had a change of expression. However, Jiawei could not see the expressions of the masked Guiling and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves from the fox hunting organization. He was already unhappy with Yun Jian, so he refuted her verbally. She can't possibly be the ancestor of the godly thieves world. The ancestor of the godly thieves world was someone from so many years ago. How old was she back then? She even claimed to be the ancestor of the godly thieves world. She must be joking. Is she showing off her acting skills now? Jiawei looked at Yun Jian with contempt and said mercilessly. Just as Jiawei finished his sentence, he suddenly saw Guiling, Ling Feng, and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves looking at a corner. When they saw a mature male figure walking over from that corner, all of them lowered their heads and said in unison to the mature male who had just appeared. Boss. It was the leader of the fox hunting organization, Long Shi. He had appeared. Chapter 2274. Page 1/1. Long Shi was already 35 years old. To be able to become the leader of the fox hunters at this age, he was already considered young and promising. Long Shi was considered a mature man. Although he was already 35 years old, his appearance was not bad and his skin was well maintained. Just from his appearance alone he gave off a different kind of handsome vibe. The fact that Long Shi had walked up to Yun Jian in front of everyone and said that in public was enough to make one thing clear. Yun Jian was the ancestor of the thieves. This unforeseen event not only frightened Jiawei and the others, even Guiling, Ling Feng, and the others who had already guessed this point had their faces turned pale with fright. It was not surprising that Long Shi could recognize Yun Jian. Before her rebirth, Yun Jian's appearance was always changing in front of outsiders. She always wore a human skin mask on her face. Yun Jian's current body was the same as her body when she was slaying God in her previous life. When she was reborn into this body she was only a little more than 1.6 meters tall. Yun Jian was the same as in her previous life, 1.65 meters tall. Her body was also the same as in her previous life. She was so perfect that no one could find fault with her. Moreover, Long Shi was very familiar with Yun Jian. Just by looking at Yun Jian's intimidating aura, he had already recognized Yun Jian. Seeing this scene, Guiling, Ling Feng, and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves of the fox hunting organization suddenly changed their expressions. Jiawei, who had said that Yun Jian was addicted to showbiz, sucked in a sharp breath from the shock. His rosy cheeks that had just warmed up were now ashen and pale as a sheet. Eva, who was also unhappy with Yun Jian like Jiawei, also took a deep breath. Put away your respectful attitude. I haven't seen you for a few years and I didn't expect you to be so good at acting. Where's that cocky attitude you used to have in front of me? Yun Jian glanced at Long Shi. She crossed her arms in front of her chest, waiting to see how Long Shi was going to act. When everyone heard this they couldn't help but be slightly shocked. From what Yun Jian said, she seemed to be very close to the boss of the fox hunting organization, Long Shi. Don't you seem to enjoy the feeling of being respected and worshipped by others? Tell me which brats in my organization offended you just now. I'll catch them and cook them for dinner later. After Yun Jian said this, Long Shi, who had been looking at Yun Jian with respect and had even lowered his head to speak to Yun Jian with a trembling tone, suddenly seemed to have changed into a different person. He walked up to Yun Jian and spoke in the tone of an old friend. As he spoke, Long Shi glanced left and right at Guiling, Ling Feng, and the other 7 level 1 godly thieves. He looked as if he had seen his prey.